Hey everybody, it's Jordan here from Journey Financial. If you didn't have a chance to catch this at our Slice of Advice at Pizza Pie Cafe, I wanted to take you through the presentation that I gave on Social Security. So for some of you, you might be like, hey, I've already started the claiming process, or maybe you're not quite there yet, and so you're looking for some additional information. This presentation's for you. I promise to keep it quick and moving and to cover a lot of stuff at the same time. So thanks and hold on. We're going to hop right into it. So overall, there has been this big, massive media push for a long time around maximizing Social Security. And the big thing is, like, what you have to understand is the claiming strategies that existed for a long, long time actually ended during the Obama administration. So there used to be ways to file and suspend an application and restrict and do all of these really unique things to claiming Social Security where you could get more out of the system than you anticipated, more than just a straightforward benefit. And for some of you, you may still be able to qualify for those, or you may be taking advantage of them now. But for those that haven't started filing yet, chances are those things are off the table for you. So it's just one of those things where you can reach out to our office, we'll chat with you. But really, at this point, because of how Obama ended that, really the chances are slim that those extenuating circumstances around the claiming strategies, other than a straightforward claim, are even going to be available to you. So I just want to give you a heads up because, like I said, there are so many companies that still use Social Security as a marketing means to try to chat with you about, hey, are you getting the most out of it? AARP is all about, like, here's your break-even point. And the truth is, it's not that simple and it's not quite that clean. But hopefully, I can give you some clarity around all of that today. So we have to start with the basics, right? So Social Security, you have to have worked for 40 quarters to qualify for your own benefit. So the 40 quarters translates into essentially 10 years of work. And how they calculate Social Security is they look at your 35 highest years of earnings, and then they do an average of those numbers and adjust it for inflation. So I always find it funny when I'm working with like a farmer or someone that's self-employed that a couple years before retiring, they're like, oh, I really need to pay into Social Security so I can get that higher benefit. And the truth is, that is because of how they average those numbers across 35 years. It's not going to make that big of a difference. Save your money. It's smart to continue to pay into the system, but making up for it in the last 2 years by dumping extra money in, that is not going to curve your benefit in a meaningful way. The other thing that you have to understand is your benefit is based on your full retirement age. So um, if you're watching this, you probably don't have the handout that I gave in class, but if you were born in 1954, your full retirement age is actually 66 and 2 months. And then for each year after that, so in 1955, you become 66 and 4 months. 1966, or excuse me, 1956, your full retirement age is 66 and 6 months, and so on and so forth. You go by like 2 years each year up until the year of 1960. So if you were born in 1960 or later, your full retirement age is 67. And all that means is that your full retirement age is the year in which you will get 100% of the benefit that you earn based on Social Security. So the nice thing about Social Security, though, is that you've got the option to start claiming at age 62 up until 70. So if you defer beyond 70, you're not doing yourself any favor. So your full retirement age, let's say it is at 67, if you start at 62, for each year prior to your full retirement age, they were going to reduce your benefit by about 7.35%. And then for every year that you wait past your full retirement age, so if I'm 67 and I wait till 70, for those 3 years that I waited to start claiming, they will give me an 8% increase to that benefit each year. So that's kind of one of the cool parts about delaying or starting early is you get to decide when you want to take it and when makes the most sense for you. The other thing you need to know is Social Security benefits are always paid in arrears. So you're not like, if you're like, I'm going to retire in May and I want my first paycheck, to land in May, you actually will have needed to have claimed in April to have that check land and be paid to you in May. So you'll be paid for April, but again, because it's paid in arrears, it won't arrive for you until May. And then the other thing that you need to know is Social Security checks are mailed in the third week and the fourth week. So depending on when your birthday falls, if your birthday is like the second of the month through like the 20th, you're going to get paid in the third week. And if it's any later than that, you'll get paid in the fourth week. So they're kind of funny about birth dates and trying to determine when your check goes out. The other thing you need to know about Social Security is it is taxed. So it's funny because it's a tax that you've been paying in your whole working life. And it was when Social Security was started by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He promised that it would never be taxed because it was a tax paying it in, but that changed in about the 1970s. So taxation started and they've pushed it up and increased it, and you can pay anywhere from 0 to 85% of your Social Security benefit can be taxed. So again, you're not going to pay 85% tax, but 85% of your benefit can be taxed. And that, like for married filing joint couple in a year, like you just have to have income over $44,000 to reach that 85 percentile of your benefit being taxed. So more than likely plan on paying taxation on it unless you're living in absolute poverty. That's the only way that you're going to be able to avoid paying any kind of taxation on it. The other thing that you need to know, and it's kind of cut off here on the screen, but you can file 4 months in advance. So it used to be 3 months. They're giving a little bit of leeway. Technology through COVID has kind of pushed this ahead a little bit. But when you decide when it is that you want to start claiming Social Security, 4 months ahead of time is when you can actually initiate your application to get that process started. So these were some of the real quick basics. Now I want to talk to you about the breakdown of, how Social Security works, some of the perks behind it, right? So I kind of mentioned here's the early versus the deferral, where it was like you could start as soon as 62, you're going to take that reduction to your payouts. Then there's the deferral, meaning if I wait beyond my full retirement age, they're just going to add that 8%. Again, there's no reason to wait beyond age 70. So beyond age 70, they are not going to say, hey, since you've put it off even longer, we're going to pay you more. That does not happen. So knowing that that's the case, do not wait beyond age 70 to start your Social Security benefit. Please, we actually have seen it. We have met people that have done it thinking they were getting additional dollars, and that was very, very sad to inform that they were just missing out on money. Okay. One other really cool perk of the Social Security system is the cost of living adjustment, or the COLA, as an acronym. So over the last 100 years, the cost of living adjustment has averaged a 2.87% increase per year. Now this is relevant because that means that Social Security benefit year over year, for the most part, tends to go up. Now there's years where it'll go up more than that, some years where it won't go up that much or nothing at all. However, the thing you need to know about this cost of living adjustment is it isn't just like a straight increase to your pay, because after age 65, as many of you know, if you're claiming Social Security with your Medicare benefits, the cost of your Medicare premium, that Part A, is deducted from your Social Security check. And so you'll find that you get this cost of living adjustment that increases your benefit, but then that Medicare premium, they increase that as well. So you don't really truly feel a whole lot of an increase to your payment just because that cost of Medicare goes up and up as you get those cost of living adjustments to your Social Security. So it tends to eat that up. But it is still nice, though, that the coverage is for Medicare is being covered through those adjustments. One of the other things that's really nice about the Social Security system, and this was from the onset of its build out, was a spousal benefit. The American family, back in the 1935, when this whole system was originally created and pitched, there was not a both parents work situation. There was one spouse that stayed home. And this has not changed through the years as far as this benefit option, even though most spouses and most American families today, it does require both spouses to be working to be able to afford life. However, if there is a situation where one does stay home to raise children or a family to that effect, what the spousal benefit does is it allows for whatever the primary earner's full retirement age benefit is, the spousal benefit, they're entitled to 50% of that. So to give you some numbers to wrap your head around, if at my age 67, my full retirement, my Social Security benefit is $3,000, and my wife had never worked and had not earned her own Social Security benefit, if she waited till her age 67, she would be entitled to a spousal benefit based off of my work record of $1,500. Now, you cannot claim a spousal benefit until the primary bread earner is in the Social Security system. So that is one caveat. The other is if I start claiming early, like at 65, they're going to calculate my wife's spousal benefit based off of my age 67. But then if she starts taking it at 65 as well, because we're the same age, they will, just like my benefit, reduce it for starting it early. So instead of her getting $1,500 being the 50% of my full retirement benefit, she's going to be closer to a $1,200 benefit because of starting it earlier. So just something to factor into that, but understanding that this benefit is often overlooked. A lot of people don't realize that they have that option and how it works. Okay, one of the other is a widower benefit. So widower benefits, they're available to you at age 60. So if you've been married and your spouse was the primary bread earner and maybe you had been at home taking care of the kids and raising them, and then your spouse passed but they had earned a benefit, starting at age 60 you actually are able as a widower to claim Social Security benefits. Now they will reduce the Social Security benefit for starting it early, just like a regular benefit. They're going to say, hey, you started it early, we're not going to give you that full retirement age benefit as if you had waited till 67. Since you're starting it earlier, we are going to reduce that. But those benefits are good for life for that widower benefit, which is awesome. Another benefit or perk of Social Security that's often overlooked is an ex-spouse benefit. And so what this means is if you've been married and you had been married for at least 10 years and divorced for 2 years, if you never remarried, you are entitled to a benefit of Social Security off of your ex-spouse work record. You can claim that as early as 62. You'll take a reduction on it, of course, for starting early, or you can wait till your full retirement age to get the full benefit. But what's crazy is your ex-spouse does not have to be claiming Social Security for you to get that benefit, and it doesn't affect their benefit either. In fact, they don't actually even get notified that you're claiming benefits on their work record. So just another way to take advantage of the perks that's out there. Again, you had to have been married for at least 10 years, divorced for 2 before you can start making the claim. And then the other caveat is you cannot have remarried. If you remarry, that is like a cancellation of the ability to claim on that previous spouse. Obviously, having been remarried, you'll have a new spouse that you would be able to claim spousal benefits off of. Okay, another perk, go Idaho, there is no state tax on Social Security. So some of the other states around us, they do pay a state tax. Obviously, we can't avoid the federal tax on this, but from a state tax standpoint, this is one of those nice perks for living in the state of Idaho with Social Security. Okay, we've talked about the perks. Now let's talk about the works, meaning what happens if you want to work. I really look at this more of a question of how to justify whether or not when to claim Social Security, because we have a lot of people that we work with that are like, hey, I'm going to retire. Do I start taking Social Security now or not? And the thing that I think most people need to consider is, what do you want to do about work? Are you interested in continuing to work at all, like contract work or whatnot? Because if you start, let's say you officially retire, but then you're offered a contract position to come back to work, which is quite common with our clients. If you're still under your full retirement age, you're claiming Social Security and you're like 62 through, let's say your full retirement age is 67. If you're 62 through 65, as of 2025, you can only make $23,400 a year without having to pay back a benefit to Social Security. So for every $1, for every $2 that you go over that $23,000, you have to pay $1 back of your Social Security. So it's kind of one of those things where when people are asking, like, do I claim, do I not? I'm on the younger side. Well, it's really like, do you plan on going back to work? Because this makes a pretty big difference. It's a, you know, capping your income to $23,000, unless you're going to have just a part-time job as a hobby, that there's really no point in claiming Social Security and having to pay back a benefit. Now, in the year that you're going to hit your full retirement age, so if I'm 66 turning 67, they do give you a little bit more of some grace there, saying we'll let you make $62,160 in that year. And for every $3 over that $62,000 you make in income in that year you hit your full retirement age, you only have to pay $1 back. How generous of them, right? That's the tricky part. It's like, again, this is one of those situations where a little more leeway the closer you are to your full retirement age. However, you just have to take into consideration, do I really want to work? And if I do consider part-time or full-time work, how is this going to affect my benefit? The reason why is you're going to pay tax when you work. So that just means that your benefit will have to be recalculated at the end of each year for the taxes you would have paid in while working. And if you increase or go over these threshold amounts that they've given you, that's why they're going to penalize you, because it's off throwing the algorithm and the mathematics that they've done. That's where the penalty comes. And if you do have the penalty, you've got 30 days to pay it back. They are very, very harsh on that. And it's like they will slap a lien, or excuse me, they will garnish your wages actually to offset the money that you will owe in a penalty for Social Security if you make over that amount of money. So just be careful. This is one of the biggest considerations you need to make is, are you going to work? And this is only applicable before you hit your full retirement age, because once you hit your FRA, your full retirement age, there's no earnings limit. You can make as much money as you want, and it's not going to reduce your Social Security benefit. What is nice though, because if you're making money, you are going to be paying Social Security tax at the end of the year. They are going to go in and make adjustments and say, okay, you have paid more into the system. It will increase or adjust your Social Security benefit. It's because they do that averaging. So that's how it's factored in. And that's why I've got up here, your benefits are recalculated. So they will come in and take care of that at the end of every year. It won't just be like every paycheck is going to adjust what your Social Security benefit does. They will not spend the time or the money to calculate that in the middle of the year. That does not happen. Okay, so now we're moving right along, right? We're going to talk about the future of Social Security. So this is kind of a big deal because for those of you that are already in the system, this is where the meat of the presentation is for you today. Because what does the future look like? There's so much talk about what's going to happen. Well, in November of 2024, the Social Security system did their independent audit where they hire out to have like the solvency information around the Old Age Survivor Death Trust Fund that funds the Social Security system. They do all of the checks and try to project, like, here's how the system's working currently, and here's their future projections. So in this study, it did come out that as of currently, we are overspending more than we're bringing in tax revenue, which is funding Social Security. And so they have validated by 2033, they will only be able to pay roughly 75% of the benefit promised to the Social Security payees at that time based on the income tax flows. So this is important to note because this is a big chunk of retirement for a lot of people. Unfortunately, there's a lot of Americans that did nothing to prepare for for retirement other than relying on the fact that they were paying into the Social Security system. So knowing that their income could be reduced by 25%, that's massive. There's very few of us that can successfully take a 25% reduction in their pay and not feel it. So the problem that we're facing is that nothing's happening, nothing's changing. There's been nothing done to adjust this. There is, we've had the Trump administration talk about reducing or eliminating federal tax altogether on Social Security, which scares me because this is our number one source. Like, this is a massive source of income because of taxation for those receiving the benefit. I know it stinks that it's double taxation, but I do believe that this is helping to break even. We're receiving about like $980 billion in taxes, and we're paying out like 990 billion in benefits per month through this. So, or excuse me, per year. So because of that, like we're bringing in less than we're already paying it out. And as this continues to move forward, because we're going through this baby boomer generation with more and more people claiming Social Security, our problem is we're just running lower and lower on those funds year after year with less people paying in. So I don't personally believe that stopping the federal taxation for those receiving the benefit is actually going to be in your best interest. So then it's like, well, what are some of the other considerations how to fix this problem moving forward? Well, increase payroll taxes. So this is going to affect, for those of you receiving it, your children and grandchildren and the rest of us in the working class. There's going to have to be an increase on payroll taxes if we're going to try to make up this 25% reduction. How many of us are getting excited about paying more taxes? Yeah, it's highly unlikely. One of the other things is increasing the taxable earnings cap. So what this means is just like as of there's an amount that they limit and how much goes towards Social Security. And that number, it goes up every single year. But one of the things that they can do is just be like, okay, we're going to push that earnings cap up even higher. So even more of your money has to go towards Social Security taxation to pay in and help offset the shortfall that's coming in the future. One of the other things is increasing the full retirement age. So instead of 67 for anyone born after 1960, they may have to push it up and say, hey, full retirement age isn't going to be until age 70 now because we don't have the benefit to start paying people at 67. So that is one consideration. One of the others is also just to change the formula or to slow down that 2.87 averaging on the cost of living adjustments that we've talked about. So that's kind of a huge deal because we get accustomed to that increase in Medicare being offset by the cost of living adjustment to Social Security. I hate to see people not have the money that they need to get their health insurance taken care of. So it's a little bit scary, honestly, but the truth is, our government has shown time and time again we tend to be reactionary instead of proactive. I have totally anticipated that through the last election cycle that we would hear talk about the Social Security system, and there was nothing. So from my standpoint, I'm looking at this being like, as we approach this 2033, pending doom cycle for a reduction, there's going to have to be some changes made. And so with that, my hope is that we're not burdened in a massive way to make up for the shortcoming, that maybe we can be a little more proactive before we get to that point. Okay, as promised, my favorite section of any of the slice of advice topics that we chat about is the pro tips. So, pro tips, all right, for Social Security, really spend some time thinking about working in retirement. This makes the biggest change. It's important to understand, if I'm going to work, how is this going to affect me? Because I don't want to have to pay back my benefit, or I don't want you to not be able to take that contract work that's offered to you because you're like, oh gosh, I did start my Social Security a little proactive. It's just really think through that and decide. But if you're stalwart in the fact that you're retired, great, awesome, move forward with it. Okay, next pro tip, start online with your filing. So I hear a lot of people go to the Social Security office. My personal experience with going there, having to deal with Social Security, was an absolute joke. I hope some of you have had a better experience. Some of you prefer a face-to-face. I'm telling you, I have found that filing online is actually very easy. Um, Obviously, I haven't filed for my own, and it's illegal for me to go through the process with anyone else. But with the hundreds of people that I've chatted through this process with, start online. And if you have trouble, you can go to ssa.gov. If there's any issue through that process, or you're not sure you did it right, they will follow up with a phone call. You can schedule a phone call second. I see going into the office as the third or last or final result, just because of the process in which you'll go through. I think you're going to find it much more timely and much more efficient to get it done online. Okay. Other pro tip, there's retroactive filing. So if maybe you were like, gosh, I think I might go back to work, I might not, I don't know, so I'm not sure I want to start Social Security once I retire, you have the ability to do some retroactive filing. And this is something that you may want to, instead of just trying to file online, you may want to do it through a phone call for Social Security or an office. I know I hate to recommend that, but what this does is saying, you could have claimed 6 months ago and they will actually pay you a lump sum for the last 6 months as a retroactive filing for Social Security. So a lot of people are like, oh, I didn't even know that was an option. So the purpose for doing that would just be like, you know, I should have done it. I delayed it. I'm going to take advantage of those last 6 months. Now, when you do a retroactive filing, that means your filing date is earlier. You're starting Social Security earlier, so there is a bit of a reduction at that point. They will calculate a reduction to your benefit for doing that, but the opportunity cost or the additional, having 6 months more pay in that year may make more sense and make it worth it to you. One of the other cool things about Social Security is in the first year that you claim, you actually get this 1 year do-over. So let's say you retire, you start your Social Security, you're 6 months in, and then you get that job offer to come back for contractual work to get paid astronomical amounts, and it's super exciting, but you're going to blow through that earnings limit in the first year. You can actually pay back everything you'd received if you're still within that first year of receiving benefits. And then Social Security is like, oh, it's a do-over. We'll pretend like you had never received any benefits and you'll just get to start over and continue like paying taxes while you're working until you do decide to fully retire and then claim Social Security. So that's one of those things where you will have to contact them to let them know, but you do have to pay all of it back in a lump sum to make that happen. Okay, one of the other pro tips, and this is actually on the back end of it, don't spend the last check that comes into Social Security for if you're a surviving spouse, and your spouse passes away. I see this happen where it's like, well, they passed away. Social Security is so funny about this. They really do try to shut it down before it will come, but like, um, prime example of this, if you pass away on the 31st of the month because you didn't live through the entire month, but they deposit a Social Security check for you in the month following, because you didn't clear that entire 31st date of the previous month, they will they will want the money back that they deposited the month following. So just know, if you spend that check, they will come back and be like, we're going to need that money back because you did not live through that entire month. So that's one thing that's tricky and that you need to know about. Okay, the other thing that I just realized as I'm going through this whole presentation is if you have a spousal benefit and you're like two Social Security incomes coming in, if one of you passes away, the lesser amount is always what's dropped off. The surviving spouse will always get the higher benefit of the two uh, benefits. So for instance, if I'm the primary breadwinner, I'm getting a $3,000 check. My wife has a spousal benefit of $1,500. If I was to pass away, they're going to stop paying my wife her spousal benefit of $1,500, but give her my $3,000 benefit. So that's the one thing about it. I need to include that on the perks page when I redo this presentation, but just want to give you a heads up about that. You don't get to continue both of those payments. You just get the higher of the two. Okay, with that being said, those are my pro tips. Thank you for hanging in there with me. And I just quickly want to show you some of the upcoming events that we've got. July 12th, we've got a library class where I'm going to be teaching about estate planning. It's at 10:30 at the Idaho Falls Public Library. July 16th is our next slice of advice at Pizza Pie for travel and leisure and retirement. July 26th, we've got another library class where we'll take that same topic again. If you can't make it to Pizza Pie, it's a Saturday at 10:30 a.m. And then our next slice of advice following that for August is the 20th, and it's going to be a financial wealth for your kids and grandkids. All right, guys, thanks for hanging in there with me for this half hour. Hope you learned something new, and I hope that you're enjoying your summer and that I can chat with you soon. All right, take care. Thanks so much.